Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in Europe.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League?
Mission accomplished in the Premier League. The American.
Scouser. So next up, and the last one for our first episode here is Brighton. We'll start with you on this one, Bickler. Bissouma obviously is a huge loss for him in midfield. I mean, we all know his off-field issues that probably worked a lot into his pricing point, because it did look like a steal in terms of the player that, they'll be getting at Tottenham over there. But what do you make of that entire situation and Brighton's offseason so far?
So that's a big loss for them for sure. I'm trying to figure out where they finished last year. Help me out, guys. Where did they finish? Ninth?
Ninth.
Wow, that's a lot higher than I thought they finished. Anyway, I look at this and I say, are they a better team from last year? And categorically right now, I would say no. So it's like, this is probably another mid-table situation. I think based on right on par, I would think right out of the gate, they'd be looking at 12th to 15th right now. And maybe that's selling them short. But my problem with them is last year they skated through on draw city. They basically just drew a shit ton of games. And I don't know if this squad has the talent to continue to draw those games this year. I mean, you got to look at Cucurella is likely going to City, it looks like. I mean, we'll see what happens there. I don't know if that means more playing time for Lamptey. I know. And then the other thing about Brighton is they sell a big player. We talked about that $50 million for Ben White, right? They sell a big player a window, and then they buy 9 players that you've never heard of. And my thing is how good are they at scouting? I don't know. It seems like they're hitting at 2 out of 10, which I don't think is good enough for them. That may be good enough if you're a bigger club, but for them, it's not. And they've got that Ecuadorian kid in the middle that I think is what they think is going to be the succession to Bissouma. Starts with the C. I don't know how to pronounce it, so don't even ask me. Ecuadorian kid starts with the C, pretty good. They're also buying this Paraguayan kid, which Gally is very high on. I have not seen enough of him. He's 18 years old. I think that seems like a decent amount of, for me, they overpaid for him, but I mean, I guess time will tell on that. I just don't know. If I'm a Brighton fan, the thing that I look at is we have Lamptey and attack power out the wings. We've got Trossard, who had a phenomenal second half of the season. We've got Sonny March. We've got pieces to build around that. We've got some very, very bright spots in Brighton. I just don't know if the pieces around those bright spots are bright enough.
I think that's the biggest issue here. They lost. I know they're looking at Kamara from Leipzig, I believe he is, right? I'm assuming to replace they're actually Red Bull Salzburg, and they're looking for him to, I'm assuming, replace Bissouma. But if you lose Cucurella, and I mean, he was huge on that left hand side for them when they were attacking. I mean, he was probably you talk about some of their other players performing. I think that threat of Cucurella making that run down the left hand side really opened up a lot of things for him. I think if they get the benefit of the doubt, it's probably more about Graham Potter than anything else, right, Gally? I mean, because they, like Bickler says, they do make these sales, and it looks like they buy a bunch of other low price stocks and then see which one will go up, and then so they can sell that, and they don't care about the other ones if they just even out on them, whatever. But they don't seem to make that move that will take him one step higher. It seems to be content with where they're at. I personally put that more on Potter than more than anything else. But what do you think?
So Paul's absolutely right on the too many draws. So do you guys know that they only had 11 losses out of the 38 matches last year? That was the 5th least amount. Tottenham had 12. And then it was Chelsea, Liverpool, and City. And then it was Brighton. with the least amount of losses. But just too many draws was the reason they weren't ahead of. They should have, with a few more wins, they're ahead of United. They're ahead of West Ham. Like, they finished the season in like 6 or 7 spot, and they're playing in Europe. I think it's all down to Graham Potter. I think the hardest thing they'll have to do, they're going to stay up. I don't believe that they'll be in the relegation battle. I believe the hardest thing they're going to have to do is hold on to their manager. Because eventually, the Tottenham job, when Conte loses his shit and leaves, or someday maybe the Arsenal job, or maybe in a few more months when they realize that, or Ten Hag doesn't want to be at United. Like, literally, someone's going to hire Graham Potter at a big, big freaking job in England, and he's going to do a good job because he's proven he can manage even with mediocre talent. Where I'll disagree with Paul a little bit is their recruiting. They bought Basuma for under 10 million. They bought Cucurella for 12 million. Last year, they're going to sell him for 50. They bought Lamptey for 8 from Chelsea. So they've made some really outstanding. Trossard was under 10. I like the kid a lot. There are some people that are big South American football people that believe this kid has more upside than Alvarez does. And I think Alvarez actually is a talent that's going to City. So the kid is really good. He's only 18. They also got a guy out of Germany, a 25-year-old striker that they feel will walk right in and take Mopé's job, which isn't that hard, for a guy that just misses sitters and picks up red cards for kicking people. I mean, he's kicked as many people last year as he got goals. It's like Caicedo is the midfielder, and he is a real top talent. He was all over the place. Now, do you guys know that they had Darwin Nunez signed last year? He was signed, 28 million pounds. It was a done deal. He was going there. And then he changed agents, and it literally fell through after they had the medical. So I think they do recognize talent. Now, they might have got him for 1 year and had to sell him for 90 million if he had a big year. But Darwin Nunez was a Brighton player by all accounts, right up to holding up the jersey, because they do scour talent. And I think they have the right balance. And, they love the Veltman kid. They feel like the Veltman kid's going to step out of the defense and possibly play in the holding role in the midfield. This is a club that got almost 20 million for Dan Burns. So let's not say they don't have some level of recruitment talent and nous. I think actually Brighton's in a good spot. And it's a huge if they turn 4 of those draws into wins, this Brighton team has enough talent to compete with West Ham, Leicester City, Newcastle, for all those spots between 10 and 7, in my opinion. So I think that's their range, 10 and 7.
Here's the thing, though. When we talk about recruitment, I mean, they have found those gems, but along those, there's a ton of names where they roll the dice and then we never heard from them again. My thing with them is they have never kind of said, they're content with where they are. I don't think they are aiming for much higher in terms of getting that investment out of a player they really cashed in on. And almost like playing bigger, investing a bit bigger. I mean, I guess Nunez would have been one of them if it happened. But that's the kind of move that I would rather have them make if they're going to go above 9th. Because I do agree. And this is what I want to ask you there, Bickler, about Potter. Because I do like him as a manager. But, I mean, do you agree with Gally in terms of him being up? I mean, I agree with that part, I should say, that he is probably up for a bigger job moving down. But do you think he will be successful? To me, he comes across to me as more of a manager that's ideally suited for a team like Brighton, a team like West Ham and stuff like that. Whereas I'm not as confident he will be able to deal with some of the personalities that you encounter when you go up to, like a top 4, top 5 team.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the personality thing's the one thing. I think it's difficult for a manager who's not used to winning versus the big boys to adjust to playing a style of football where you're expected to win. And I think, to Gally's point, maybe I'm underselling Brighton on the recruiting. I just think the problem that I have with Brighton is that if you are recruiting well, and if you have a great manager and you're recruiting well, you should be progressing because you are accumulating talent faster than you're selling it. And that's the problem I have with Brighton. They seem to be selling big talent but not accumulating it at a rate that like where they're snowballing that talent and they're accumulating more talent than they're selling. That makes sense. And I just think that like it's like, if they are hitting on all these talents, like that squad should be starting to grow organically. And it doesn't mean they can't sell a big player here and there, but like I don't necessarily see the growth in that squad. In terms of Graham Potter, like, yeah, I think he's done a phenomenal job there. I don't know that I'm sold that he goes to a team like, well, I mean, United's probably not a great example. Let's see, he goes to a team that has that's the thing. I mean, you think about teams that have great foundations, and you're really only looking at two in Liverpool and City, because Tottenham has all sorts of backroom issues with ownership that doesn't necessarily want to open up all the time and spend. I guess I'll throw Tottenham there. Like Liverpool, City, Tottenham. Those are the three teams that you get a really, really solid club backroom with a foundation for success, and everything else is a gamble, right? Arsenal's a little bit of a gamble with their ownership. United is definitely a gamble with their ownership. They're going to back you financially, but you've got Ferguson in the mix still, and just all sorts of issues. Yeah, I don't know how he would do. Like I said, like I think that he is almost a manager that does better playing for points than he does for wins. That makes sense. Like I think that like him getting points off big teams is what he's good at.
That kind of explains, I guess, the number of draws they've had.
Yeah, and when you're a big team, getting points off other big teams doesn't cut it.
So, Gally, if you're gonna, because you said they're about 8 to 12, right? That's where you kind of put them. I mean, what would they need? What would they need to add for you to say, they might shoot for like a slightly higher 7, 6, 8, somewhere around there?
A striker to score 15 goals this season, because they haven't had that in 4 years.
Okay.
Like they need a focal point. And I think that is what to Paul's point, they've bought, what was it? When they bought the guy Anduin, it was on the screen that never panned out. He barely ever played. They bought Jakubasic or whatever the hell his name was. And he was supposed to be like a big time, like attacking player. He was like the Dutch player of the year they got him. Florin Andon. He was supposed to be this big time. He was going to score goals. I think they try, and I think they're a prime example of the type of club that can't make mistakes. And that's the problem. They don't put 40, 50 million. But let's be honest. If Graham Potter, and this is where I disagree with you guys, if Graham Potter was the manager of Leicester City, they'd be a better club because he's a better manager than Brendan Rodgers. And I'll say it all day long. Brendan Rodgers will be the first or second manager fired this season. And I actually believe it'll be Pochettino that takes that job because that smells like a Pochettino team. It's got the pieces, young talent, young up-and-coming players, talent all over the pitch that you need to mold. And Leicester has regressed from, honestly, the first year that Rodgers was there. I think Graham Potter could coach at West Ham. I think he could coach at Leicester City. And I think he could coach at Arsenal, to be totally honest. But we all know how I feel about Arteta. So, I'm being real. Graham Potter's done more in the game of professional football as a manager than Mikel Arteta has in a year and a half. He really has. And so to me, he has to get that opportunity before I'll say he can't win with good players. I'd like to see him with some really talented players. But McAllister has made their team better. Motor, before his injury, really looked like he was going to add something different to Brighton from an attacking player on the wing. I actually think they have some solid pieces. I just think they need a goal scorer up front that can score goals when it's created, because Trossard creates too many opportunities that find the fifth row and not the back of the net. And I think that there are a few of those in that side. And I think with a goal scorer, and I don't know if they have it or not, but with a sure out Premier League striker, you give them Jamie Vardy, I give you a Europa League spot. And I mean, the goal scoring Jamie Vardy of a couple years ago, not the guy with hamstrings as tight as ours.
The party,
not the guy who's,
not
the guy who's thankful that Wayne Rooney's moving his wife across the pond.
Only for him and his crazy wife. Did you hear about that? He bought the freaking soccer team in Rochester, New York. Kelly's so excited. We're going to be in a dive bar some night in Rochester, and we're going to walk into a Vardy party. My favorite thing about Jamie Vardy is the day he took his shirt off the pitch to wipe his brow, and it realized that he has a tramp stamp that says Vardy across the back of his. He literally has a license plate. He's a dude. Like, someone needs to let that dude know. It's amazing. A Vardy party.
Yeah, this is turning out to be a great time to end this podcast, I guess. What is your
I'm inviting Jamie Vardy down here to go to Myrtle Beach. It's official.
Tell me it wouldn't be the most fun if you had to pick 5 people to go out drinking with from the Premier League. Tell me Jamie Vardy wouldn't be one of them, and I would invite him just so his trashy wife would show up, and because she would make the place even crazier. They are literally like a couple off the card. They make the Kardashians look like they're part of the royal family.
Where do you have him for the prediction at the end of the season there, Bickler?
I think they're going to regress this year. I see him in that like 12 spot, like 12 to 15. Like I see him dead mid-table. I would say 10, 11, 12, like right in there.
I put them 8
I don't think they'll be as low as like 12 to 15, but I think they'll be 10, 11, 12, like right in there mid-table.
Yeah, I think 10 to 12 sounds about right. I just don't know if they're going to be able to replace, especially, I think it really for me hinges on Cucurella. If they lose him, I can see them going 12 and under. I think if they're somehow able to keep him, I can see them being 10 to 12 or 8 to 12.
Unfortunately, not happening. Cucurella is already in City. It's a done deal. They're just waiting to make it happen because they're going to grease him for the money right to the end. They're going to get 50, 60 million for a guy they paid 11.4 for last year.
Is there any team in the history?
Is
there any team in the history of football that spent more money on fullbacks than Manchester City? It's like obscene how much they've spent on fullbacks.
I think they've spent more than everybody else combined for that spot.
Just fullbacks.
Yes, just on the fullbacks. If you look at the other teams.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode. Make sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and keep following for more great content at American Scouser TV.